Truth versus Power, the Congresswoman who challenged the Supreme Court. It started with one question from the back of a church gymnasium in Toledo, Ohio. A woman with tired eyes raised her hand during Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's town hall. Why do judges keep making decisions that hurt us even when we vote for change? The room fell silent. Crockett didn't hesitate. Because too many judges don't fear the people anymore. Some of them think they're untouchable. Her voice was calm but cut like a blade as she continued. Some of them are. That's the truth nobody wants to say. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't grandstanding. She was simply stating facts, referencing real rulings from Oklahoma, Texas, Indiana, speaking about lifetime appointments, political influence hiding behind black robes, and cases dismissed when money backed the defendant. By morning, the clip had gone viral. News networks amplified it. Conservative pundits called it an attack on the judiciary. Her staff received over 900 calls, most threatening, demanding she retract or resign. But Crockett didn't back down. She posted the full clip online with more commentary, citing inconsistencies and past examples where judges had acted without consequence. This wasn't just noise. She came with receipts. Then came the unprecedented. An official notice from the U.S. Judicial Oversight Commission. Crockett had been summoned to a special contempt hearing in St. Louis. The presiding authority? Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan herself. No one could remember the last time the Supreme Court publicly responded to a sitting member of Congress like this. It made no sense on paper. Supreme Court justices didn't handle disciplinary hearings. The whole thing smelled political. Her advisors warned her not to go. Issue a statement. Let the process play out from afar. But that wasn't Jasmine. The Thomas F. Eagleton Federal Courthouse buzzed with tension. Protesters lined both sides of the steps. Some with American flags, others with signs reading, "Truth is not contempt," and "No gag on Crockett." Inside, the courtroom was packed with congressional aides, former judges, law students. At exactly 9 a.m., the doors opened. Jasmine Crockett entered wearing a simple navy suit, flat shoes, and carrying a plain leather case. No entourage of lawyers. No theatrics. Just her and her voice. Minutes later, Justice Elena Kagan entered in her black robe, eyes fixed only on Crockett. The two women stared across the room at one another, expressions unreadable. Representative Crockett. Kagan began, her voice clipped. "You stand here today accused of conduct unbecoming of an elected official, statements which may have incited a breach in public trust, and called into question the legitimacy of the judiciary without due cause." She paused. "This proceeding is not criminal in nature, but it carries weight. You may present your case. You may speak freely." That last part surprised many. Speak freely. That was a wide door Kagan had just opened. Crockett stood slowly, placing both hands flat on the table. "Justice Kagan, I won't insult you by pretending I didn't know what I said would land hard. I chose my words because I believed they needed to be said, and I still do." A murmur rippled through the gallery. "I'm not here to play defense," Crockett continued. "I'm here to make something plain. If speaking the truth is now punishable, then this isn't about justice. It's about control." What followed wasn't a speech. It was a methodical dismantling of the case against her. Crockett opened her files. Pages of notes, highlighted rulings, news articles. She spoke directly to facts, dates, quotes from prior cases. She presented examples where judges had violated ethics codes without consequence. Court-documented history. "Congresswoman," Kagan said, fingers steepled, "you've made serious claims about our courts, about fellow judges, and yet you sit here without legal counsel. Why?" "Because I don't need a lawyer to tell the truth," Crockett replied. "I need the room to hear it." Quiet gasps rippled through the audience. "Truth without discipline is chaos," Kagan countered. "The judiciary doesn't answer to emotion or popularity." Crockett stepped away from the table, walking toward the center of the room. "And that's part of the problem. You think people like me come in here emotional, unruly, incapable of restraint. But I spent 3 nights cross-referencing judicial behavior reports. I read every code of conduct for federal judges." She let the silence stretch. "You think I'm being reckless. but I'm being methodical. Kagan shifted in her chair. Representative Crockett, the issue isn't whether problems exist. It's whether your comments deliberately undermine public faith in the courts. What if someone had acted violently citing your statements? There it was. The unspoken accusation finally spoken aloud. Then maybe you should ask why our court system is so fragile that one congresswoman's words could set it shaking, Crockett replied, her tone unchanged. Maybe the public's faith isn't collapsing because I said something. Maybe it's collapsing because too many people like me have stayed silent for too long. Do you believe you're above the law? Kagan asked suddenly. No, Crockett said simply, but I don't think you are either. That sentence echoed through the courtroom. For a moment, Kagan's gaze flicked downward, not in submission, but in thought. Then came Crockett's boldest move. She reached into her case and pulled out a stack of neatly organized documents. No speeches, no theories, she said. Just facts. She handed them to the clerk, who delivered them to Kagan. The justice's eyes moved quickly over the first page. These are just a few cases from the past 10 years, Crockett explained. Federal judges who violated ethics rules, made public statements supporting candidates, dismissed complaints tied to private financial interests. Not one was sanctioned, not one removed. She flipped through example after example. Judges failing to recuse themselves despite conflict of interest, attending private fundraisers for law firms while overseeing their cases, all without consequence. These aren't rare. They're just buried, Crockett said. And when someone like me talk about them out loud, I'm the threat. I'm the danger to the system. Kagan pressed her lips together. The court is not blind to misconduct, Congresswoman, but there are channels. Channels that lead nowhere, Crockett snapped, her tone finally sharpening.
She opened another folder. This is a signed letter from a whistleblower in the Office of Judicial Integrity. They were instructed to delay processing misconduct complaints because the judges involved were close to retirement and didn't deserve a stain on their legacy. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. But Crockett wasn't finished. She pulled out a manila envelope and held it with both hands. This is a transcript from a sealed arbitration hearing. A federal judge was recorded advising a private legal team on how to phrase their settlement offer so it would appear neutral in court. The same judge later ruled in favor of that team. People were whispering now. The bailiff looked toward the bench, uncertain whether to intervene. "How did you obtain it?" Kagan asked. "I won't disclose the source," Crockett replied. "But I can confirm it was never supposed to be sealed under federal arbitration guidelines. The seal was applied retroactively after media inquiries came in." She took a step closer to the bench. "You want to discipline me for speaking up? Then say it directly on the record. But let's be honest about what this is really about. I broke the silence, and now it's inconvenient." Kagan took the envelope, her fingers hesitating. This transcript, if authenticated, could implicate multiple violations of judicial ethics. "It's already been authenticated," Crockett said, "by 2 former legal clerks and a court reporter who was later fired without explanation." Kagan's face remained unreadable, but something had cracked beneath the surface. "This court is now in recess," she said. 15 minutes. When Justice Kagan returned, the mood had shifted. It was no longer a disciplinary hearing. It felt like a room holding its breath. "Before we continue," Kagan said, removing her reading glasses, "I want to ask you something, Congresswoman, off the record." "Why now?" "You've had this information. You've been in office for years. What made you bring it here to me?" Crockett inhaled slowly. "Because I didn't believe it would matter before. I thought it would get buried like the rest. But when I saw your name assigned to this hearing, I realized maybe you'd listen." "You think I'm fair?" "I think you were," Crockett said. "And maybe you still are. But even good judges become protectors of the system if they stay in it too long." Kagan didn't respond immediately. "You remind me of someone," she said quietly. "Me. When I was younger, before the confirmations, before I was the one expected to keep the temperature down." She looked out at the room. The courts were never designed to survive untouched by criticism. But when criticism becomes noise, it's easy to dismiss. What you brought today isn't noise. It's a wound. Crockett looked down, then back up. I've seen too many people get swallowed up trying to play nice. If I go out telling the truth. I can't fix everything you've shown me, Kagan said, but I can make sure this hearing doesn't end the way it started. Before issuing her decision, Kagan allowed one final statement. Crockett stood again. I love this country. That's why I speak up. I love the law. That's why I won't pretend it's perfect. And I believe in justice. But belief without confrontation is just faith without work. If that's contempt, then so be it. Justice Kagan nodded once and turned back to the bench. Representative Crockett did not come here today to be celebrated, nor did she come to apologize. She came with accusations and with proof, Kagan said. Your comments, while pointed and politically charged, were not without foundation. The court finds that they fall within the protections granted to you as a public official speaking on matters of public concern. Murmurs swelled in the room. Therefore, this court does not find sufficient grounds to proceed with contempt charges. But Kagan wasn't finished. However, this hearing has exposed deeper fractures. I will be issuing a formal judicial memorandum recommending a full ethics review at the federal level. These documents will be submitted to the proper oversight channels without redaction. She set the gavel down gently. This hearing is concluded. A week later, Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her D.C. office as evening fell. The headlines had already faded. The media had moved on to scandals, polls, celebrity divorces. A knock came at the door. Her legislative aide entered with a thick envelope from Justice Kagan's office. Inside was a letter. I may not have agreed with your method, but I cannot deny the necessity of your message. You forced a conversation many of us have avoided for far too long. For that, I owe you more than a ruling. Crockett folded the letter and set it aside. She didn't need validation, but she could admit it meant something. A crack in the wall, no matter how small, was still a start. She walked to the whiteboard near her window where she'd written months ago, "What are we doing that actually matters?" Beneath it, she wrote, "Pushing even when it gets you punished." Because in the end, it had never really been about her. It was about everyone who watched and wondered if they could speak up too. If it was worth it. If it would matter. To them, she had one message: speak. Even when your voice shakes. Even when the room is full of people with more power and cleaner reputations. Speak when they tell you to sit down. Speak when silence would keep you safe, but truth might set someone else free. Because silence keeps things easy. And easy doesn't change anything.